Land is limited. It's also emotional and personal. Our homes are on land. We live off the land. Nations are defined by their land. We all need land, but access to it and ownership of it is unequal. The land inequity we see today in Scotland is vast and totally out of step with many of our European neighbours. Patterns of land ownership in our neighbouring nations are typically 1,000 times less concentrated than in Scotland. And not only do relatively few people own most of Scotland, but around a quarter of all estates over 1,000 acres have been held by the same families for over 400 years. So this is the history we live with today, and which this Parliament is slowly beginning to overcome. Land reform, as we hear, is a broad topic. It's rural and urban, but it also concerns the marine environment. It's inextricably linked to local democracy, fiscal policy, land prices and human rights. Scottish Greens have always seen radical land reform as a vital element of the journey to a more sustainable, equal and prosperous Scotland. I hope that this bill is the start of the Parliament taking a renewed and sustained interest, be this through greater devolution, empowering local authorities through tax reform or community empowerment. In this bill, the provisions on transparency are important. Who owns and benefits from land is a key question, and I believe the electorate are entitled to full transparency about who really owns Scotland. Now, there's no simple way to deliver complete transparency, but unfortunately, what the government propose is unworkable. It limits those who can make requests under Section 35 and contains no measures in Section 36 to compel any company in, for example, Grand Cayman, to reveal anything at all about who is in control of it. It's unenforceable, and it will continue to allow Scottish land ownership to be involved in complex schemes of tax avoidance and evasion and secrecy. The best option on the table by far is to allow only EU-registered companies to own land, and we welcome the committee's recommendations on this point. Fiscal reform also is a core part of land reform. I fully support bringing shootings and deer forests back onto the valuation roll. Of course, no one likes to pay tax, especially if it's a tax that they've had an exemption from, but there is more than enough evidence that this should occur. As Andy Whiteman, land reform expert, puts it, why should caravan sites, pubs and local shops subsidise those who occupy shootings and deer forests? The hair salon, the village garage, they're subject to rating, and deer forests and shootings pay nothing. The Land Reform Review Group made it clear that there is no clear public interest case in maintaining the current universal exemption of agriculture, forestry and other land-based businesses from non-domestic rates. Conclusions from the House of Commons Scottish Affairs Committee report this year also raised similar concern, that the exemptions are not having the desired impact, and that these exemptions should be open to the same level of scrutiny as other government spending, that they could in fact be pushing land prices up and undermining the Scottish Government's commitment to increasing land and community ownership. Bold land reform is needed for Scotland, and this can help deliver more affordable homes. Current rates exemptions for vacant and derelict land and for empty industrial buildings both incentivise land in urban areas to stay vacant, and all of this land could be used for homes for people. There's almost 11,000 hectares of derelict and urban land vacant in Scotland, and a massive demand for affordable homes.
McGregor.
I thank the member for taking the intervention. The point she makes about sporting rates in relation to garages is odd to me, because whereas sporting rates are going to be levied in Scotland as an extra tax, there is no extra tax on garages.
Alison Johnstone.
I'm sure the member will agree that when we have a situation, for example, where the King of Dubai, who's the Prime Minister of the UAE, is paying absolutely nothing, and a local caravan site is paying some £12,000 a year, there is a massive discrepancy. I simply do not see the case that some local businesses are subject to NDR and shooting estates and the like are not. Where was I? No, I was actually speaking about vacant land in Scotland and the fact that we have so much of it, it's untaxed, and we have massive problems with homelessness. We heard earlier today that there are 54,000 homeless households in Scotland. And what about the deplorable situation Andrew Stoddart and his family found themselves in? This has brought tenant farming rights up the agenda again, and rightly so. It was clear that poor housing issues jumped out during Rackie's evidence gathering, and I learned that homes under agricultural tenancies are exempt from minimum standard. There are clearly improvements to be made here, and I support the calls for a right to buy for tenants in specific circumstances. And I'd like to, in closing, flag up a couple of things that Scottish Greens think should be included in the bill. There are numerous examples of common land, not on the register, passing quietly into private ownership. We should create a new protective order for land without an identifiable owner, and this should require the keeper to conduct a public consultation to help ascertain the true legal status of the land well before any title is registered. And finally, we have left on the statute book a piece of legislation called the Division of Commonties Act 1695. It was one of the legal tools used to privatise vast tracts of common land. This law should be repealed to protect the few patches of common land that remain, to signal our break from the land grabs of the past. Please. We will support the bill today, but there is much to be done before stage 2. Thank you.
Thanks. Now call on Mike Russell to be followed by Jimmy McGregor.
Thank you, President.